Although it says at the top of your Zoom, you're live streaming, it does take a few more seconds to actually live stream.
Right.
And I think we should, yeah, we're the cogs are turning. And I think you were good to go.
We're ready now then.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay, well, welcome to this meeting of the Grants Committee, which we're finally having. We have the usual starting points, declarations of interest.
First, Mr. Chair, I have apologies from Councillor Boynton. He can't attend due to
Sorry,
work.
I should have taken that first, yes. One apology for absence, no declarations of interest. Any declarations, I've forgotten the right term, of exemption from declarations of interest.
Any dispensations?
Dispensations. Very good. None. Okay, so the next item is to consider the underlying aspects of future grants, which we did discuss at an informal meeting a few days ago and have placed before you in the agenda. Any comments on those?
If I could just explain, Mr. Chair, split it up into A, B, C, D, but they might not all necessarily be needed, because what's written in the grants policy will dictate the questions that I'll put together in the form. A lot of it's already there, so if they may have to meld those 4 items.
Yeah, yes, I may come back to you on more stuff regarding that, but for the moment, we're looking at the basic principles. Does anybody have any points? Is everybody happy with the form that they took after the preliminary meeting? Well, shall we vote if nobody wishes to comment? Are we agreed on the basic principles? Those agreed?
Policy.
Oh, well, I'm sure there's a lot of work gone into it, and I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel again.
Oh, that's unusual.
Pardon me for being forward thinking.
Right, okay, so we've accepted that. Moving on, what's the next item, Matt?
We need to have a formal resolution and motion that this committee accepts the policy as submitted.
Okay, if you want it in those words.
Can I just finish, please?
Sorry.
We need what I'm proposing, we need a resolution to pass this to full council. So what I'm proposing is that this committee accepts the wording of the policy as presented to the committee and recommends it to full council for approval.
That sounds fine. Proposed by Margaret. I'll second that myself. We agreed? I think that's unanimous, but my eyes aren't very good. Okay. Next item, that is
You're muted, Matt. You're muted.
Sorry, that's not always a bad thing. Then I will take the content and format it into the policy format with the letterhead, etc., and remove the bits that were more guidance as to what towards the end of the policy that guides how to manage the other aspects of it, and that present that to the full council.
good. So we're now coming on to those aspects, as I understand it.
The next point A was the grant policy, the grants policy terms and reference. The second B is questions, application form, and waiting. And again, members will have those notes in the pack. It's a little bit difficult to finalise the forms because I've been having spoken to Councillor Johnson and Councillor Horsley, and I think other councillors as well. The idea would be that based on what is written in here, I will then format that into forms based on the questions that you're seeking answers to in the applications, because what the questions are, there isn't a list of suggestions, but they're also extrapolated from the points that are in the policy as well to get the answers. So I was thinking it might be that I could put that together based on this, and then coordinate with 2 or 3 members of the committee on finalising the exact document for full council.
Right. Are we happy with that? That we have further exchanges of emails as necessary? Matt deals with it in the way he proposed.
Yes.
Councillor Pinder wants to speak.
Sorry. Go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, I think Matt's quite right that really this side of it, the most important thing is getting the policy approved, because we have to agree that and pass it to full council for approval. And I think Matt's quite right that really what follows from there is more operational. It's what follows from the policy. So
Yes.
it's more operational, and we don't need to be, looking at that. And he's quite right. It does actually, a lot of it depends on how that goes through. So I think Matt's right.
Okay, are we agreed there?
Mr. Chair, could I just come in a second? Just in terms of the application form, Matt, with the new website, what kind of possibilities do we have for enabling people to complete their applications online? Is that something we can facilitate with the new site?
Yeah, it gets more complex these days with accessibility and WCAG. We, as other councils will know from experience, I'm sure you've all written funding bids in the past, there's various different ways. Some of these ridings are online, but there are issues regarding that with some forms of accessibility. So when I spoke to Aubergine, who produced our website, when we're producing it, looking towards this point, they suggested that still Word or PDF forms are still the most appropriate, because the security, you have to have any levels of security on the website. If you're putting in your organisation's details, there's going to be kept there. There's got to be added levels of security, which a bigger organisation would have, but it's tricky for smaller organisations. So the suggestion is still PDFs and Word files, because they are then accessible with reading technology, etc. So I had initially thought we may be able to go down that route online, but it's not always possible, and it's not always appropriate now, which sounds counterintuitive with using modern technology.
No, that's brilliant. And the other query I had would be not actually filling out the application form itself, but would it be possible to do something that would kind of guide people on the website with a few kind of clicks as to which kind of grant they would maybe be looking at? Because obviously we've defined 3, and it would be helpful if, without them having to put in any specific confidential information, they could just kind of follow some simple questions. Do you have a constitution? Like, are you looking for funds over this amount? That kind of thing, that would just give them some very basic guidance, like if they click the right buttons to then say, we believe you should be applying for this level.
Mr. Chair, we could do some of that even in a more simpler way by revising the flow chart. So it's all on one document. I can liaise with Aubergine to try and make that accessible, because sometimes again with colours and blocks. But I'm sure we can look at some way that guides people through without them having to actually submit any information, as it were.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? Well, So is there anything else that we need to do apart from that rather brief discussion as to what Matt does next?
No, I think
The other 2 points on the agenda, Mr. Chair, were the agreement and feedback forms, and then to consider any other matters. The one thing I would like to ask, please, is, you know, when I do this work, it would be useful to liaise with not the whole committee, because that, you know, that's a camel designed by committee. So if there were 2 or 3 members that I could liaise with on the forms before they go to full council, that would be useful.
Right. Would Margaret wish, or Chloe, to be one of those?
I think those of us who actually were responsible for drawing up the policy probably got the best handle on. So that most of the work were me and Linda, and you know, Chloe did have some input, so that makes sense to me.
Okay, so that's you, Margaret, Chloe, Linda, and myself. I promise not to say too much. Are we okay on that, Matt, or is 4 too many?
I think that's brilliant. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I was thinking, that people are involved with from the start of the policy.
Right.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Chloe?
Thank you. I just wondered, obviously we had some thoughts about how we would kind of do the weighting. And I just wanted to check other members of the committee, having seen that they thought that was reasonable, or whether they thought there should be a different input or something like that. Because obviously the weighting is, we're trying to make it more clear about how we actually make decisions on grants, as well as kind of what kind of grants we have. So I just was hoping if the members of the committee who hadn't been kind of with us at that meeting, if they had any thoughts or feedback.
Nobody putting their hands up. I had some thoughts subsequent to that meeting, and I spent quite a long time on them, and unfortunately finished just too slowly to get them to you before the meeting. I can do it now if you like. Yeah. Sorry. I find it difficult to do anything as well as Zoom, but here we are.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
When you discuss this, I'm sure other members that's present, if you discuss it between the 4 of you and include your thoughts if needs be, I'm sure that the rest of us, we've agreed everything tonight, and it's not going to be a big ask of the other members. I'm happy for you to include what your thoughts are, David, with the other 3. And when it goes to full council, if any of us have got any issues, I'm sure that's the opportunity to change it. Otherwise, yes. We've agreed all this tonight, Mr. Chair, and it seems foolish that we're going to go back on having a discussion.
Yeah. Are we agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else we do need to do? We said any other business, but that's slightly improper unless there really is something urgent.
Mr. Chair, it's the issue of the actual agreements and feedback forms. I think, again, the agreements will come out of this process, because the agreements that somebody's signing for a one-off small grant will be different to the agreement for the partnership grant, so they need to be developed in conjunction, and we do have maybe more time to work on those, because whilst the council wants to get the system out by the start of December for people to start applying, we could still be fine-tuning the actual agreement documents during that time. The important thing is to get the criteria criteria and how people can apply out there as soon as possible.
Yes, and if we have the actual application clear at the point when people start applying, the feedback forms can be fine-tuned after that. That okay with you all?
Yeah. One thing I think I would like, I'm sure you've all read the policy, but one thing I think we ought to just point out is that the timing this year is going to be a bit odd because we're halfway through the meeting. If we're looking at what we're calling the partnership grants, what we're going to do, normally we would look in the year, once this is up and running, we can look for them. We can have our partners make applications, and that will decide how much we put in the budget, because the partnerships may vary from year to year. Obviously, we can't do that this year. We need to try and solicit partnerships as soon as possible. So what Linda suggested very wisely was that we just make an allowance in the budget and draw the grants for next year from that. But then once we've got it up and running, we'll, forewarned is forearmed, we will actually to be able to budget more precisely, because we'll know who we're forming our partnerships with and how much money that will involve. That's obviously
Yes,
the other grants, which are a defined amount that we have to give out.
yes, and that it's not likely to vary by more than the odd one. Are we agreed? Lots of nods. Okay. Are you happy, Namat?
Always.
Okay.
Yes, but
You know it. Press your hands reaction button.
I'll work on it this week and hopefully probably get back to count the four councillors around about Monday, because I've got some other things this week with PPS coming up, and then that'll give a week to finalise, a few days to finalise everything to get it to full council for the 30th. I'll try and get it done by the end of this week, actually, to try and give people the weekend to look at stuff.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Matt. That's for all your hard work on this. I know that a lot of it's been done in what should have been your holiday time.
I'm a bit sad, Mr. Chair, because having worked for charities and done funding bids for years, I actually quite enjoy this side of it.
Yeah. So 1848, I think that I can draw this meeting to a close. Thank you all.
Thanks.